With the emergence of Internet and the World Wide Web, new business models began to be explored. Electronic commerce has emerged as a very important application of World Wide Web. It is cheaper and faster to carry out business transactions within an organization and among organizations electronically using the network connection. Hence, it is important to understand how business transactions are carried out electronically in a reliable and safe manner. In this module, we will be discussing on the basics of electronic commerce, abbreviated as e-commerce, architecture of e-commerce system, the need for security in e-commerce transactions, how electronic payment schemes work in e-commerce, and the challenges faced by the e-commerce industry. To begin with, e-commerce primarily refers to purchases made on the internet through online store. In a broader sense, it refers to the paperless exchange of business information using any of the following ways. 1. Electronic data exchange. 2. Electronic mail. 3. Electronic bulletin boards. 4. Electronic fund transfer. The origin of e-commerce can be traced back to 1970s, which involved the process of sharing electronic documents and arranging sales. Few commercial sales websites were founded in the early 90s, but the real beginning was with the introduction of Amazon and eBay in 1995. It will be interesting to note that Amazon, which now takes up the large percentage of e-commerce market share globally, first reported its annual profit in 2003, almost 8 years after its inception. One standard and most acceptable definition for e-commerce is that it is a commercial transaction which has happened over the internet. Transaction of money, funds and data are also considered as e-commerce. When you log into your Amazon account and purchase a book, it is a classical example of an e-commerce transaction. Here, you interact with the seller by exchanging data in the form of pictures or text and effect the payment. Sharing business information, maintaining business relationship and conducting business transactions using computers connected to a telecommunication network is called e-commerce. In any commercial transaction, payment is an integral part for goods supplied. We have basically 4 types of payments in e-commerce. They are credit card payments, electronic check payments, micro or small payments. Mostly these are made for internet-based services such as music download. Then we have electronic cash payments. Each of these requires a different system of payment. Now can we look at the business models on e-commerce? When we look into that, there are basically 4 basic models in e-commerce: business to business, B2B, business to consumer, that is B2C, consumer to consumer, C2C, consumer to business, business to government, government to business and government to citizen. Here, we will initially look at the business to business model. A website following the B2B business model sells its products to an intermediate buyer, who then sells the product to the final consumer. For example, a wholesaler places an order from a company's website, and after receiving the consignment, it sells the end product to the final customer who comes to buy the product at the wholesaler's retail outlet. Now, we will look at the business to consumer model. Here, the products are directly sold to the customer. A customer orders the product from those displayed on the website. The website then sends a notification to the business organization, and after processing the order, the organization will dispatch the product to the customer. In the case of consumer to consumer business model, consumers sell their cars or electronic equipment by publishing the information on the website. On the other side, consumer can also choose to buy from the website by surfing through the available options. After discussing all these, now can we look at how the marketing process is being carried out in an e-commerce trade. To materialize a trade between a buyer and a seller in the commerce platform, there should be a specific process. This process normally includes the following stages. 1. Buyers entering the market through World Wide Web and entering the vendor homepage looking for a product. The next stage is selecting the products from the catalogs. After filling out the purchase orders, the transaction processing occurs. Now, the purchase order being sent to the seller. Once the seller confirms the order, it will proceed to the payment stage. Payment will be made using any of the multiple payment options like a credit card, a debit card, or maybe an electronic check or even e-cash. Payment information is sent to the bank then. Concurrently, credit check is done on the buyer's bank, and this will result in the final payment. And finally, the product would be delivered to the buyer. The success of every business model depends on its ability to create value for the stakeholders. The internet creates value by vastly lowering the cost of transferring many types of information on a one-to-one, one-to-many or many-to-many basis. In the cases where the product itself is information, the potential for value creation is enormous. Financial transactions, both banking and investing, are the most important examples of transaction where no physical product is involved. Recently, we can see drastic changes in many other information services like ticketing for travel or maybe for entertainment, medical assistance, document retrieval, and so on. When the transaction involves atoms as well as bits, but the cost of moving the physical goods is low when compared to the value of the goods, we can say the reach of the internet is far greater than the historical alternatives. The main advantage of increased reach is the improvement in the matching of buyers and sellers. We can also see that even in the cases in which the physical cost of transportation is high, the superiority of the internet as an information transmission channel is leading to an increased separation of flow of goods and information. It is true that information through internet interaction is less personal than human interaction. However, it has several characteristics that make it potentially much more valuable in many cases. The most important one is the low cost of providing very detailed content. For example, investors, before taking any financial investment decisions, can access to live and recorded interviews with experts. They can also refer to reports on stock market analysis and maybe even place queries online. Secondly, e-commerce platforms allow for effective asynchronous communication because such information access can take place at any time the investor or the buyer decides. Thirdly, these platforms allow considerable flexibility in dealing with information with greater interactivity. and search capability than a catalog for menu-driven sale. One important aspect of this flexibility is vastly reduced cost of customizing the service. As an example, online stores like Amazon.com will make recommendations of likely books of interest tailored to the characteristics of the customer. It is true that none of these approaches to personalizing the services is as good as dealing with a salesperson on a one-to-one basis. But they are cheaper and can be made available to many more people. Another finding by firms, which is quite surprising, is about the cost savings on distribution, which is claimed to be potentially very large. Despite the relative inefficiency of delivering goods directly to the home, here exists so many sources of cost saving in direct delivery than doing so through a store. Some of the savings include reduction of handling costs within the store, theft, rent. In case of rent, low cost reduction centers can replace the expensive urban or suburban stores. In business to business models, there are also large potential cost savings from a better distribution process. Over the time, e-commerce and internet will bring greater direct changes in the process of production. We can also watch the changes in the cases of services. Specific functions are parceled out to the areas that are less expensive or having at least some kind of time zone advantage. A well-known example is the software projects, in which the code is handed over to the software engineers in India at the end of a business day in United States. Many low-skilled labor-intensive tasks will tend to flow to regions with a low-cost labor. Now let us look at the demand side. There are several aspects to the values created by matching customer tastes and preferences to the existing goods. The information about goods can come not only from the wide range of online catalogs, but also from online reviews, product comparison engines, and in many cases from online samples also. The electronic platform using internet has the potential for using histories of consumer purchase behavior to suggest future purchases. Online stores benefit from enormous economies of centralized inventories. However, exploring the economies of centralized inventories presupposes that the buyers are familiar with the wide range of products or can easily make choices based on the electronically provided information. This system can work well only for well understood standardized products. However, it still faces significant obstacles in facilitating transactions for specialized goods where the customizing information cannot be transferred easily in the digital format. One feasible solution to this function is the concept of hybrid stores, which provides a showroom function carrying a very broad range of items but a very few of each particular item coupled with an online delivery capability. Retailers like Reliance Trends have started experimenting on this model by offering price benefit on online purchases. The internet and related technologies have caused the cost of many kinds of market interactions to plummet. Today, we find easier and less costly ways of doing the things we already were doing. Over the time, the shift will be more drastic. We will discover that we can do entirely new things, and this will completely restructure the way in which certain business activities are carried out. Now can we look at the operating models of e-commerce business? Broadly, there are three models of e-commerce business: marketplace model, the aggregator model, and the inventory model. In case of marketplace business model, product or service information is provided by different vendors, but the marketplace operation and delivery is done by the participating wholesalers and retailers. This is also a zero inventory model where the e-commerce operator acts as an intermediary for buyers and sellers without storing the goods. Marketplace provider charges a percentage of the sales amount as its revenue share from the vendor. The online giants like Amazon and Flipkart come under this category. In case of aggregator model, it is a model of providing services of unorganized sector in an organized way under one brand. In this, the aggregator is a brand and the services provided by the aggregator will ensure a standard quality and price. The best example of this model in Indian markets are taxi provider services like Ole and Uber. Under inventory business model, goods and services are owned by the e-commerce entity itself and is sold to the consumers directly. Here, the e-commerce operator is the seller and it issues invoices to the customer on its own name. Now, let us look at the pricing models in e-commerce. Pricing on e-commerce platform is highly challenging. Sellers typically face many challenges in the market. They have to rival against dozens of competitors, decide on prices for thousands of products, face constantly changing market situations. Optimal pricing decision requires handling a multiple of dimensions for each competitor like price, quality, shipping time, shipping cost, product ratings and so on. Financial aspects such as discounting as well as inventory holding costs also have to be taken into account. At the same time, pricing decisions are becoming more and more relevant in the current e-commerce businesses, with more than half of the online shoppers regularly comparing sellers to find the best price. It is no longer the product descriptions and images alone that captures the attention of the customers. Often, pricing is what matters most. Pricing on marketplaces involve complex equations with numerous variables including stock in hand, the brand image and the price of the competitors. There are three big issues to be addressed in marketplace pricing. Issue 1, price parity. 2, MAP policies. 3, product performance. By price parity, we mean the total price offered for a product including the item price, shipping and discounts must be at or below the lowest price offered on any other online sales channels. Today, as a growing number of manufacturers shift from direct to consumer marketplace sales, they are leaning heavily on minimum advertised price or MAP policies to keep prices competitive and prevent brand erosion. For retail partners, MAP adds a layer of complexity when competing on e-commerce marketplaces. Lower price listing risk harming or even losing profitable relationships. To remain truly competitive on price, there is need to understand the current demand for the product. When the demand is high and also if orders are flying in fast, it is a sure sign for a price increase. If a particular product isn't performing well during a slow season, then price needs to be adjusted down. There are mainly 5 different e-commerce pricing strategies that can be implemented for online pricing. First one, cost plus pricing. Second one, target return pricing. Then value-based pricing, competitive pricing and also lead generation model. In cost plus pricing strategy, the retailer places a markup on the top of the wholesale cost of the product. It is often referred to as keystone pricing. If the retailer is experiencing a slow inventory turnover online and have substantial shipping and handling costs and own products that are scarce, higher markup price can be implemented. Cost plus pricing ensures an ample profit margin at all times. Target return pricing is based on the goal for the return on cost. Price is determined such that it always ensures return on investment. A disadvantage of this strategy is that it does not take into account price elasticity and competitor pricing. Value-based pricing takes into account a very deep understanding of customer value. It establishes prices for products and services largely on perceived value. This strategy will work best for products that have high emotional component or those products that exist in a controlled market environment. Competitive pricing strategy is the practice of setting a price based on what immediate competitor charges for similar goods or services. In many situations, it can result in a narrow gap between cost and profit. Now we will talk about lead generation model. Lead generation model is the practice of engaging users to actively request additional information online. As the pricing is contingent upon terms and conditions stipulated in predetermined contracts, this strategy ensures that the visitor clicks to request information with regard to product details and pricing terms. This strategy requires a portal login for the customized pricing needs. So learners, to conclude, a successful online pricing policy will be a strategic advantage for an e-commerce store. But adoption of each strategy will depend on the customized need of that business unit. After all, establishing the appropriate price is the ultimate requirement for the revenue maximization. Now, can we discuss few challenges for this evolving business model? E-commerce sectors have been facing multiple challenges in their business operations like taxation issues, incidents of fraud, issues with cybersecurity, intense competition and preference for payment in cash by customers, or as we say COD. Inadequate infrastructure and low digital literacy is also standing as a hurdle in the establishment of e-commerce platform. Guidelines on taxation of certain transactions like e-wallets, cash on delivery, gift vouchers, etc. still requires clarity. Incidents of distribution of counterfeit goods through e-commerce platforms have also been increasing, which is added to the woes of consumers and e-commerce companies. A trustworthy mechanism which can allow consumers to authenticate sellers or the products should be in place. Cybersecurity is another major challenge faced by the players, as there is huge volume of customer information which in many cases is shared with third parties such as logistic providers. All these arises concerns about the possibility of exploitation by external entities. Looking very closely, another major challenge involved in the process is the payment by customers in cash. Receiving payment in cash makes the entire process complex, risky and more expensive for the companies. The working capital requirement of these companies also will increase. Higher goods return ratio for the products sold online is making the process more expensive for the companies involved in this. It is reported that the return percentage of order in cash on delivery model is much higher compared to the online payments. The intense competition in this sector has forced the companies to adopt aggressive pricing policies, offering heavy discounts and offers. There are situations where these companies pay high commission to the vendors and other parties. This condition has extended a lot of pressure on the profitability of the companies. conclude, in the emerging global economy, e-commerce and e-business have increasingly become a necessary component of business strategy and a strong catalyst for economic development. The integration of information and communication technology in business has revolutionized relationship within the organization and those between and among organizations and individuals. So friends, I'll be back with interesting discussions about few more evolving business models.